the Mustang and the medic. He clung to the hills of southern Texas like a second skin even at dawn. The rising sun glared across the corrugated tin roof of an aging stable, highlighting every dent and rust streak. A dry wind stirred the dust around the Whitlo ranch, lifting it in lazy spirals that danced before disappearing into the endless blue sky. At the edge of the property stood Evelyn Hart, a tall, weathered woman of 59. Her lean frame was wrapped in a faded flannel shirt tucked into worn jeans, and a sun-bleached cowboy hat rested low over eyes that had seen both war zones and heartbreak. A long, jagged scar traced her right forearm shrapnel from a roadside explosion during her time as a combat medic in Afghanistan. She never hid the scar. To her, it was just another badge of survival. Evelyn hadn't planned on returning to the ranch. It had belonged to her parents, both now gone, and after years in uniform she thought she'd find solace elsewhere. But when she stepped onto the dusty soil of the Hart family land, something settled inside her, something that whispered of home. The fences were falling, the barn sagged, and the house needed more repairs than she had dollars, but none of it mattered. The land was hers, and after a lifetime of following orders, that meant everything. She had no spouse, no partner, and no ambitions beyond quiet mornings and honest work. Her daughter, Natalie's mother, had passed away years earlier, a wound Evelyn seldom opened aloud. Natalie, now 15, lived with her on the ranch. The bond between grandmother and granddaughter was silent and strong, forged through shared loss and the quiet resilience of women who carried more than they ever said. On that particular morning, Evelyn sipped black coffee from a chipped mug and watched as the horizon brightened. At the corral stood her closest companion, a horse named Dusty. His coat was a mottled gray, his stance alert but calm. Dusty wasn't a show horse. He had no papers, no pedigree. Evelyn had found him 5 years earlier, starving and wounded, after a summer flood exposed the mouth of a ravine near the property's edge. He looked more ghost than animal, ribs visible beneath his mud-caked coat and a gash festering along his front leg. She brought him home expecting nothing. No saddle rides. No tricks. Just a chance to die somewhere warm and dry if that's what it came to. But Dusty surprised her. He healed. Slowly, stubbornly. And as he recovered, Evelyn noticed something uncanny. Listened. Not just in the way horses respond to familiar hands, but in the way soldiers read the mood of a room. Dusty knew when she was struggling, when the dreams returned and her breathing grew shallow. He would stand close, still as stone, letting her rest a trembling hand on his shoulder until the moment passed. She never trained him in the traditional sense. Instead, they moved together in a language of glances and weight shifts, the kind that couldn't be taught, only felt. It wasn't long before Natalie, ever the quiet observer, began sketching Dusty in her notebook. She watched how he responded to her grandmother's touch, how they moved in sync without a word. One morning, a polished black truck rolled into the driveway, raising a curtain of dust as it came to a stop near the barn. Evelyn didn't flinch. She watched as Darren Lockett stepped out, a man built more for shaking hands in front of cameras than wrangling livestock. His cowboy hat was spotless, his boots clearly never worn in mud. Behind him emerged his son, Grant, 30, smug, and smirking before he even said a word. "Well, if it isn't Evie Hart," Darren called, waving a glossy brochure. "Didn't think this place was still kickin'. We came to invite you to the San Antonio National Horsemanship Showcase." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Thought that was for professionals." "Exactly why we figured we'd extend the courtesy," Grant chimed in, glancing toward Dusty. "They always need a good laugh to open the show. A little rustic entertainment never hurt." She didn't respond. Just took the pamphlet from Darren's hand and watched them leave. That night, Evelyn laid the brochure on the kitchen table and said nothing. Natalie looked at it, then at her grandmother. "You should go," she said simply. Evelyn sighed. "It's not our kind of place. We don't have the money or the name." "But we have Dusty," Natalie replied. "And they don't know who you are." The next day, Evelyn pulled her father's old saddle from storage, cleaned it with the precision of a medic prepping tools. Dusty stood patiently as she tested the fit. He didn't spook. He didn't flinch. He just waited. They began training. At dawn and dusk, when the heat wasn't unbearable, Evelyn worked with Dusty in the corral. Natalie sketched from the fence line, offering encouragement between pages. By the end of 2 weeks, Dusty moved like smoke in the wind, elegant, silent, sharp. He responded to the tiniest shift in Evelyn's balance, stopped on a whisper, turned on a breath. A week before the event, their truck broke down in the middle of nowhere. Steam poured from the hood. No cell signal. Dusty pawed the trailer floor restlessly. Just as Evelyn considered hitching a ride back to town, a silver rig rolled into view. Out stepped Cole Ramirez, the new vet in Fairview who had seen them at a local benefit months ago and recognized the bond between horse and rider. "You're not gonna make it in this heat," Cole said. "Let me haul him. I'll ride in back to keep him calm." Evelyn hesitated. Pride warred with practicality. But Dusty's safety came first. They transferred him into the spacious rig and Evelyn watched as he settled without protest. In San Antonio, the contrast was immediate. Gleaming trailers. Horses worth more than most homes. Attendants in polo shirts. Dusty, plain and unregistered, was stabled near the far end in a stall that smelled of mildew. Natalie wrinkled her nose, but Evelyn just shrugged. "Doesn't matter where you start. Only how you finish." The night before their performance, Dusty grew agitated. Evelyn found a pile of hay laced with something oily and acrid. His lips were swollen, eyes wide with discomfort. Sabotage. She flushed his mouth, applied ointment, and whispered steady reassurances until he calmed. Cole appeared minutes later, having seen the light from their stall. "It's chemical," he said, sniffing the hay. "Some kind of irritant. Someone wanted him out of tomorrow's show." Evelyn nodded grimly. "Not the first time someone's tried to break me down. Won't be the last." Morning came, hot and bright. Dusty stood still as Evelyn adjusted the saddle. She wore her father's old hat, the scar on her arm visible beneath her rolled sleeve. Inside the arena, the crowd waited. The announcer introduced them with a tone of bemused curiosity. Evelyn Hart, representing stall 29, and her horse, Dusty. Laughter rippled through the stands. Someone muttered, "Let's see how long that mutt lasts." But then the music started soft, haunting. Not a flashy anthem, but a slow, mournful melody. Evelyn and Dusty moved as one. A side pass here, a pivot there, transitions so smooth they looked like shadows gliding across the dirt. No reins, no commands, just intention. The crowd went silent. When Dusty lifted into a leviteriering on his hind legs in perfect balance, the arena held its breath. And when they finished, standing still in the center like a painting come to life, the silence shattered. Applause erupted, louder than any all morning. In the chaos that followed, an older man approached the judges' table. Thomas Baird, once head of Celestial Pines Breeding, claimed to recognize a rare marking on Dusty's hind leg. "That's Celestia's son," he said. "She was one of ours. Went missing during a suspicious transfer. We thought the foal was lost." More voices joined. A former employee stepped forward, Jeremiah Cole. He cared for Celestia, knew the circumstances of her disappearance. He pointed to Darren Lockett and his son Grant, who had arranged the transfer. "You told the driver to leave her in the ravine," Jeremiah said. "You wanted the insurance money." Gasps. Cameras. The competition halted. An investigation ensued. Darren's estate was barred from future showcases. The breeding rights revoked. Grant vanished from the scene, his name now mud in every stable from Austin to Albuquerque. Evelyn and Dusty? They didn't just win that day. They redefined what winning looked like. A year later, the Hart Ramirez Ranch opened its gates. A place for rescue horses and veterans, for quiet healing and second chances. Natalie taught kids to ride with patience and heart. Cole joined as a full-time vet. Jeremiah offered to help rebuild the Celestial line, but Evelyn had one rule: no breeding for profit. Only purpose. Dusty became more than a horse. He became a symbol of loyalty, resilience, and truth. And every night, just as the sun dipped low, Evelyn would walk the fence line, Dusty beside her, the wind lifting the brim of her hat. She would rest her hand on his neck and say, "We did good, partner." And Dusty, true to form, would say nothing at all, just breathe steady like he always had, carrying her forward. Home. Together. Unbroken.